All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dianna Watkins Dickerson, and I'm your host of Teach and Preach. These are conversations in the Black community. We, of course, come from a womanist approach. I'm so excited to join you once again. I do apologize for being a little bit tardy to the party, but I'm so glad that you're still yet here and working with us. Technology can be a blessing and a burden, but we are here tonight live with Dr. Annette Madlock. She is an author, scholar extraordinaire. On her Facebook, it says that she is a believer and a pusher of dreams. I do believe this. She is actually, to me, a big sister in the academy, and she is so sweet, so kind, so loving, and really has gotten me out of several ruts. And I thank God for her. She's also a minister, she's a professor. I mean, she is absolutely extraordinary. So, y'all already know how we do. Get your comments, your questions together. We're going to get right into it. And I want to invite you all to make sure that you're letting us know what you think. You like, you share, invite folks, because this is going to be an amazing conversation. So, without further ado, I want to introduce to some and excite you all to Dr. Annette Matlock. We're going to be talking about the topic, hashtag the doctor is in. Y'all already know what it is. So, Dr. Annette, go on ahead and introduce yourself to us, please, ma'am.
Well, I have to say thank you so much for all the kind words. Those are words that are encouraging to me because I really do believe in helping my sisters and my brothers in or out of the academy just work towards their dreams and their visions and what they see themselves doing. And so, as an independent scholar, as a health and health activist, I am also an entrepreneur. So I have Sister Circle Writers, and that's for academic writing and other writing for those who want to tell their stories. So if you're like me, I'm a survivor of medical trauma, and part of my healing process was to write about that. As you can see with the books behind me, those were that came out of necessity, and also how to leverage my time in the academy to write about something I wanted to write about.
That's it.
That's it. And to make it of value in other places. And so if you need help with that, if you need some encouragement, you need to get a little bit of writing coaching, just come and talk to me. And the doctor is in.
Right. In more than one way.
In more than one way. In more than one way. If your writing needs some first aid, this is it. The Sister Circle Writers. That's it. So
we definitely got it in the other day. We met together with a bigger group, and we had some wonderful, wonderful conversation. Not just conversation, but conversation, critical analysis.
Mhm.
We're pressing each other and challenging each other, because this is Bible, right? That's why it's
This is
called
it.
Teach and Preach. We
That's it.
preaching and we reaching. We also know that iron sharpens iron. So when she says that she is definitely one to encourage you, that's what she means. But let's get into this conversation now. You all have been hearing about it, about the correspondent. I'm just going to, leave him nameless because he really doesn't matter. He doesn't count because a lot of times we see within these white supremacist circles all of this mediocrity,
Mm-hmm.
and folk with honorary doctorates who are giving, I guess you have license, even with an honorary doctorate, right? Just to say whatever you want to say because of your whiteness, because of your stance within, as they say, the patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And said was that Dr. Joe Biden, who will now be our new FLOTUS. I say Dr. FLOTUS, so somebody write that in the comments. Dr.
Dr.
FLOTUS.
Flotus.
She will be our new First Lady of the United States of America with her husband, right beside her husband, former Vice President Joe Biden, but now President-elect Biden. So we're very excited about that. Obviously, she has a resume that speaks for itself, but here's the thing. She is being criticized about not having a medical doctorate, right? And there's a whole history of doctoral degrees. I see you, Aletha. That's right, Dr. Flotus. You can go ahead and type it.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Flotus. Let's make that go viral. But she's being criticized, right, by someone who has an honorary doctorate. Okay. And she's being criticized because, oh, well, she just has an EDD. So, we don't need to call her doctor. There's so much packed, not just in the Wall Street Journal op-ed piece, right? And what the Wall Street Journal is, right? And who their audience is, but this has caused a huge stir, not just in research communities, but just in society in general. And so, Dr. Annette, can you speak to just all of the multi-layered things that are going on? We're going to try and break them up piece by piece.
Well, when you think about higher education and academia, there is this thing because even Juris Doctorates, law degrees, should you be, doctor, attorney, what does, but historically, it's not doctor in that sense, unless they're getting a doctorate of law, not just a Juris Doctorate, but they've gone on further. And then, yes, educational doctorates, and then the philosophical doctorate, and doctorates of arts and humanities, and there's different layers, but that's because where have you put your intense study and time and energy into a particular topic. And we know that, particularly as women of color, we are degreed up the left, down the right, around the back, in the front, and still you walk into a room, there is no acknowledgement of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like I won't answer you if you don't say doctor. I won't, and particularly if you've just gone around the room and named every doctor there.
Yeah.
When you get to me, you just want to call me by my first name.
Right.
Not going to happen. I won't answer you. Now, with students, particularly African American students, they're not going to call you by your first name in most cases, but they still want to say Miss. And
Mm-hmm.
trying to just get students to understand sometimes that there's a reason it's doctor. We worked hard. We studied hard. We have written forever and ever and a day to earn the letters, and of course pay for the education.
That's
and
right.
So the recognition is earned and deserved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there are there's a lot of trauma, indignation, and individuals who just do not want to recognize our way of knowing and understanding and doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you'll run into those things, and this new thing with just professors allowing students to call you by your first name. There's a line there. Right. And as time has progressed and moved forward, the line is, I'm not your friend, so you don't call me by my first name.
Right.
And then with this whole 24/7 perception of availability.
Oh yeah,
that is added on top of that. And so there's definitely a lot going on there. And mm-hmm. just to be able to pull each one of those dynamics apart, we have our community, African American, Black community. We recognize work and degrees. And so, if you're at church and they know you're going to school, you doc already.
Right. Before you
before you done, it's doc. Okay, it's doc already. And so there's different places and spaces where the hard work is respected, and it's not. So even if like my home church in Minnesota, it is always Dr. Annette. That's where that came from. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because there's a sense of yes, that's my family, but they also recognize, and so that's the name they gave me. That's not the name I selected for myself within that community. So when I use it here with you, when I use it in Sister Circle writers, that's because that's my sense of community.
Right. Right.
Yes, call me by my first name, but recognize those letters there, because there's some experience, there's some expertise that I'm
Right.
giving you, and that I want to share with you, and I want you to know, because you might not know me, but I need you to know
Mm-hmm.
that this is what you're getting
Mm-hmm.
when you engage in conversation with me, and we discuss and talk about your work, your ideas, what you want to do, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
Mm-hmm.
seeing any questions on your side of the chat?
We're waiting on y'all's questions because this is a participatory event, okay? Y'all already know Teach and Preach is all about conversation. You've got two scholars. We're going to communicate up in here, okay? And so for those of you that might be new, those of you that are a little bit timid on asking questions, here's the thing. No question is a dumb question. And when we fail to ask our questions, when we fail to engage, and when we fail to, just throw it out there, even if it's just a thought, then we fail to move the conversation along, because what we never want to do is stay in the same place. We never want to stay
Mm-hmm.
where we are. We want to always move forward. And that is the goal of this conversation. But here's something else. Now, Dr. Annette, you mentioned some things that are very, very important. I mean, like all these different nuggets. And so to pick and pull a few of them out and highlight
Mm-hmm.
for our viewers. So one thing that I heard, we have to realize that Dr. Joe Biden, is a white woman. And so there are going to be some particular respect, there's a sense of respect that she is automatically afforded due to her whiteness.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a sense of disrespect that she is still going to be berated with due to her femaleness, her femininity, her sexuality, right? So there's going to be a particular sort of disrespect. And so I do want to highlight that. I see a lot of feminists, a lot of Black
Mm-hmm.
feminists, women, barista, that are speaking out about this, and that this shouldn't even be a conversation, right? But it still is in 2020. However, I think what you're also talking to and speaking to as well is there is a particular line in the sand that you don't cross and you can't cross, specifically within the Black community, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Black women. I actually am thinking of a book chapter that just came out. I'll be sharing that with you guys. It's in an edited volume that I participated in, and it's the title is basically "Please Don't Call Me by My First Name," right?
Pretty
And
much.
even right as a graduate student, because y'all know I only graduated 10 minutes ago. But, even as a graduate student, I'm coming in, I have a whole mortgage, I have a whole husband, I have a whole child, right? I have a whole car note. I'm grown, right? And then also too, I think being, an experienced veteran, like not just a veteran, I've been in the military for 10 minutes, like I've actually deployed and served.
Mm-hmm.
With all of those experiences and all of that authority as an officer too, right? You have 50-plus-year-old men that are saluting you. Not that that's you get anything from it. It's that sign of respect.
Right.
But what you're not going to do is not respect me in my own classroom, right? However, I remember a student saying to me, "You one of my new aunties." And but we had a relationship, right? There's a particular difference between that auntie status, right? And the complexity of that within the Black community, but also still that line of respect in the classroom. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
Watkins Dickerson at that point, or now it's Dr. Watkins Dickerson, right? Can you kind of pull apart just why it's so important for that title as a Black woman in the Black community, but also that distinction when there is that sense of familiarity with maybe it's not your professor, but someone at church or whatever the case may be. Can you kind of pull that apart?
When you're speaking to the classroom, um, for myself in particular, most of my teaching has been at predominantly white institutions. So
Mm-hmm.
when I've had Black students, whether they were from the Caribbean, West Indies, or African American, or first generation African, there's usually like one or two in a classroom in a whole academic year, if. And so there's like an unspoken sense of connection, because many times it's like, what? There's a Black professor?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so there is that. So there is the sense of, there is a sense of pride for that student to actually see someone who looks like them.
Right.
And that can go two different directions.
Now this is true.
It can go two different directions. It could be that sense of pride that says, this is great. I want to do my best work. I'm going to take advantage of this, because if they're planning ahead and they're looking at their courses down the line, they probably will not have another, depending on the school they're at. And then the other is the same attitude that some of your white students might have. It's like, how did you get here? Why are you here? You're too hard.
How dare you?
How dare you have expectations, and then high expectations for that. Right. And so then that's another dynamic with that. And so with that, we're calling it throwing shade now. There will be on purpose not using your title, and they know it. And they won't even say professor. An email will come in and will have no salutation.
Right.
A question will be started without any, excuse me, professor. They'll just start talking, because there's just no respect there. And not because of anything that you've done. It's just the fact that visually they're not ready to see you with any authority over them. And right. so that's the thing that happens sometimes. And then you have, like I said before, the other direction with students. It's like, oh my goodness, I have a Black professor. And for some students, they've never had, even through K through 12, they've never even had a Black teacher, period.
Right.
And so there's a lot to consider when you're looking at the role that a title plays in education, and then what other people perceive that is about. And then we have people in our communities, like, they have no clue what we do.
They don't, and
I do. Yeah, I try to explain. I said, K-12 teacher, that is a whole different level of patience, a level of knowledge that happens in that classroom to manage all those little bodies, middle school bodies, high school students, just to manage that. That's a different it's a different type of skill. It's a different skill set. Teaching is there, but there's a lot of other stuff that goes with that. So my hats are off to all the K-12. I substitute taught for a little bit. So I know what they're going through, even now in COVID and prior to COVID, what that classroom situation is like, particularly in urban schools.
It's very different. It's very, very different. It's very different. And I mean, so for those of you that don't know, my husband actually has an EDD, which is the same degree that Dr. Biden holds, and that's a doctorate of education. So let's pull them all out here. We have the highest degree that you can get from a university is a doctorate of philosophy, and so that's the PhD. And it's a little bit different in the European system, so we'll just work with the American system, right? The general ones that you will see or you'll hear of. After the PhD, I would say, as far as tier, I know I might step on some toes here, but it's you can look it up. It's the highest degree is the PhD. After that, I would say, as far as tier, a medical doctorate, you could say that's right there. The difference, though, we have to remember between even a PhD and an EDD, because Dennis was talking about stuff I didn't even know about, running statistical stuff and,
Mm-hmm.
Latin, computational thinking. Sir, I don't know what you're talking about. I asked him, I said, what's your dissertation about? He said this and that. Oh, okay, that's cute. That's sweet. All right, do you want some coffee? Do you want some snacks? Like, my job was to keep D3 out because it was his turn to write. And then
Mm-hmm.
when my turn came, right? Because with a doctorate of education, also with a doctorate of theology, you're still doing that original research project.
Right.
Um, and so with a medical doctorate, you're not really doing original research, and you're certainly not defending it in front of a panel of folks. So there is a huge difference between all of these different degrees. A doctorate of education, obviously you're specializing specifically in educational praxis, most times. A doctorate of ministry, same thing, ministry praxis.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a marriage between the DMin and the PhD at most institutions. Um, and then, Juris Doctorate obviously is the law degree, but you're still, as you pointed out earlier, not called, quote, doctor. Here's another thing. And let's go back a little bit to this journalist. I don't want to give him too much shine, right? But when we have an honorary doctorate, I've been to programs where they award those and they say, you have all the rights and privileges to use that title. But we do have to be careful and also, I would say, cautious that we don't get ahead of ourselves, because the research that you do, and you're far ahead of me, she has books. I don't have any. So, so let's start there. There are books, plural, right? Go back to your ninth grade English teacher. But beyond that, there's this original research. Can you talk a little bit about the project that not just you had to do for your dissertation, right? But the research, the intense projects that you have to do to get this original research out, publishing, editing, which we talked about at length.
Mm-hmm.
Reviewer one is just horrible. But talk a little bit about that aspect so the audience really kind of chews on that.
So when you're looking at your doctor of your philosophy, original research, there's a question that you're asking, and then with that question, how is that going to add to the conversation? And particularly for our community, when you're doing that research and delving deep, what is it going to do for your community once
Mm-hmm.
you're done with all that?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so you're looking at that. You're doing surveys, and depending on how you do this, if you're doing rhetorical work and looking at different types of messaging, you're pulling in some survey data. Maybe you're looking at another data set that's
Mm-hmm.
comparable to
Mm-hmm.
what you need and what you're looking at. So you're looking at to see, okay, health communication. So for instance, for me, I actually took a few courses in genetics. So when I read the scholarship by medical professionals,
Right.
I know exactly what they're talking about as it pertains for my community and community health and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not in public health, don't have to be in public health, but I'm
Right.
looking at that information, I'm reading it and asking questions and doing research when it comes to Black women, breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
cultural influences on our health decisions,
Mm-hmm.
what our different aspects of identity bring to our decision making, and then the numbers.
Right.
And then as a communication scholar, I'm interested in the narrative, the story.
Right.
So I'm pulling together the numbers and the story to give a richer piece of information, because we're human beings, we're not just numbers.
Right, exactly.
And so when you're looking at that research, you're pulling it together. It has to be organized, and then you have to remember we're trying to fit our work and the way we think into a system that wasn't designed for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking and explaining and going through these things about what we want to research and spend our time on, because remember, for some, this is years of work. This isn't an overnight thing. It's not even a 1 year thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The first day, the first day you walk into your grad classes, you need to have some idea of what it is you want your dissertation to be about.
Oh yeah.
Because every piece of information, every article you read, every book that you read in every class should be to inform what you want to write about. And of course, we have comprehensive exams and screening exams, so you need to have that up here. So there's a lot that goes into this process, and it is not a joke. I've seen grown men cry.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen women cry, grown women cry,
Or drop out.
or drop out. There's a lot of ABD, all but dissertation going on, or there's a lot of I did 1 year coursework and I was done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's not
And
an easy process.
we don't want to get on those folk and say like, oh, that's. But we're speaking to how stressful and how intense it is.
Exactly.
It is
So
so intense.
it's okay, and you know what, it might be. You know what, I need to put my health first. This, I might not be able to do this right now. There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all.
There's not. And I mean, and that's Bible, right? There's a time and place for everything, a season under the sun, right? That's so we have to be clear in saying that any doctoral program that you have earned,
that you've earned,
difficult. It is difficult. It's hard work. If you didn't cry, then you got to cry around the corner. It's going to come out somewhere.
It's going to come out.
You might hold that thing within you in some very, very nasty and very dangerous ways. And as you kind of spoke to, that can manifest in your health, which in just a moment we're going to segue to, but we have a comment and a question. Aletha says, Minister Washington, because I know her personally, she said, it's a sign of respect. So calling people, doctor, reverend, pastor, right? Whatever the title may be, it's a sign of respect. I believe in our culture, speaking to African-American culture, we have been taught to give respect, right? In my household, I was not allowed to use my parents' first name. No, ma'am. You will get right up out of here.
I tried once at my wedding. I called my mom at the rehearsal. I called her by her first name. My pastor looked at me like, I know you just didn't call your mom by her first name. My aunt and my uncle looked at me, and if my mom had her shoe in her hand,
oh yeah,
I would have been ducking. I was like, oh, won't try that again.
Exact look.
Won't try that again.
Listen, and I'll joke with my mom and stuff like that. Ooh, Jerry. Like, but there's this sense of respect even in that. Like, I'm joking, and we have that bond in that relationship. And I think my generation will do that. But now, when it all gets to all seriousness, okay, and that's the thing, when to switch. You know
when to switch.
Like, okay, this is not a good time. This is not right. And so to go on further with her point, there are boundaries, right? That cross. So we know those boundaries. Here's her question. Do you think that some of this has to do with cultural differences? So maybe speaking to the reporter's comments toward Dr. Biden, or maybe even just in African American culture, how we act and react and how we embrace not just folks with a doctorate degree, but anybody with a title. But, as we were doing in our, I want to say it was our roundtable for NCA, which if those of you would like to see that is on this channel, on this page, you can find that that conversation. But I think it was Dr. Sampson, Melva Sampson, saying that we respect and applaud everybody's position.
That's what we do.
Whether you the choir member, and even if, and maybe this was on her Pink Robe Chronicles, and if you haven't seen Pink Robe Chronicles, please check that out. But I can't remember what it was, but she was speaking about how even if you're not singing well, come on, baby, that's all right. It's that sense of traditional communalism, right? As we see scholarship. So I think yes, it's those cultural difference. Can you speak more to that a little bit?
I think some of it is cultural difference, and part of that cultural difference is we're not supposed to be in that space. Okay, and
Okay.
so when we're there and we're present,
Mm-hmm.
there's this thing that goes deep down, and it's like they're not supposed to be here. They won't be said out loud,
Mm-hmm.
but the dig is in
Yeah.
not addressing you by your title and addressing everyone else by
Mm,
their title. So
absolutely.
so it's those instances. Now
Mm.
there is, some professional organizational culture where everybody does go by their first name.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They're in their little room. They go by their first name. That's what they do. However, do not encourage my students to call me by my first name, because I don't
Don't,
go for that.
don't do it. Teresa said, better not call mama by her name.
Nope, I won't ever try that again. I tried it once in my whole life, and I'll never do it again.
Done. Okay. But right. And it's the same thing that, yes. So if it's just us talking, right? We have that relationship. But if we're out and about, but before we had that relationship, when I first met you, hello, Dr. Madlock, how you doing today?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't know you, you didn't know me, and we didn't know each other from a can of paint. But beyond that, that relationship grew. But also too, I remember in starting the program at Memphis, I met, Andre Johnson. Happy birthday, by the way, my advisor. I want to say maybe it was over 10 years ago at
Mm-hmm.
American Academy of Religion, and we were peers. He had just finished his MDiv, I think, and almost finished with his PhD, something along, I can't remember, but he didn't have his PhD at that point. And so we were more peers. I was in ministry, he was a pastor, whatever. And as soon as I started the program, I said, all right, Dr. Johnson. And I switched it up immediately. Why? Because even though we had that relationship prior to, you are now my advisor.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure know that I respect you. I see you as the only Black man in this space, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see you also too, and I could see and I could tell in the classes they wouldn't respect him as much, right? And so I want to make sure that I honor you, and that now that I've graduated, it's a little bit different, and I'm like, oh, I guess I can call, I guess I can't call Andre now, and it's different, it's weird, but that switch, right? My pastor, you're a minister, yeah, I'm ordained itinerant elder too. But I'm not saying Walter. Well, hey Walter, how you doing? No, no,
Mm-mm.
order, out of order. Hi, Reverend Henry, if you're watching. But it's Reverend Henry,
It's Reverend Pastor. That
right?
that's it.
Right? It's
Mm-hmm.
that sense of making sure we revere each other. And so I want to send a few shout outs. Lakeisha, who was on last week, she sent in a wave. One of my sorority sisters, she was on last week with our conversation with the twerk gate. If y'all want to see that, please make sure you do. Charmaine said that was a great explanation, Doc. So great explanation on breaking down,
Mm-hmm.
oral program and the research. And Alisa just said yes, she's just agreeing, she's just agreeing. All right. But you started to bridge toward health com.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to bring it back there. I wanted to make sure we laid this part out too. And that's why I thought this title was great. The doctor is in. Because we're talking about doctorates, but we also need to talk about doctors as far as not just PhD, but bridging the gap and having that conversation with MD. And so those that are maybe PhD as far as virologists, immunologists, um, I don't know what
And
other.
now you can get PhDs in all of those.
Right, you can't.
So
And
they're not done yet.
Exactly.
They're not done yet.
You can get an MD and a MD PhD
Mm-hmm.
at the dual. So that shows that the two are different, but it also shows you that they are very important, especially when you get.
Very.
I,
A lot of again, research intensive.
uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. But the difference with the medical doctorate is that they diagnose and treat.
Yes,
And
that's the
so
practice. Yes.
that segues now into our conversation about what everyone is talking about. If those of you have not, what's going on, Soror Terry? Hey, how are you doing? I love you, lady. And she's in Tennessee as well. A few other folks are in Tennessee. I know you're up in the Midwest, I
We
guess.
don't have any snow yet here, though. It's all on the East Coast.
Well, and they can keep it there. It's getting cold down here. But I don't know what y'all's numbers are looking like as far as COVID. We've got to talk about that. We
Oh,
have got to
definitely.
discuss that. Tennessee is number one in the world right now for COVID cases. That was just reported, I want to say this morning, as early as this morning or last night. But we are number one. I wasn't able to pull up the numbers. If anybody can help me out in the comments, y'all can go ahead and write the number.
Put the numbers in. Johns Hopkins keeps up to date, all over globally, all over the world, in every place in this state. Johns Hopkins has a good way of tracking all those COVID numbers, and particularly in the Milwaukee area, where they tried to throw away all the Black people's votes, is high numbers. That's where high numbers of COVID. But in addition to having the health disparities because of diabetes, heart disease, the cancers, Black people are on front line. There's a lot. We do a lot of service work.
Yes.
And whether it's volunteering or it's our job every single day. So you're out there. You're in the thick of it. And so there's definitely, I know there's questioning about this vaccine and the different vaccines that are coming out. The Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine that are coming out, and one of the things I'm going to look at, it's on my agenda, is to make sure I understand the differences between those two and then the others that are coming out to be approved. And knowing that, who participated in the studies and how is all of that going to work? And so we know there's a history of distrust with the Black community and the medical community for a very good reason. Harriet Washington, early on in my studies, I used her books. It was called Medical Apartheid. Yes. And she went through the entire history. So we know about Tuskegee and we know about Henrietta Lacks, but there was a reason why you didn't walk by graveyards. So all those little stories your grandparents or great grandparents talk about, there's a reason. People did get snatched, and then Black people, yes, you have a choice over what you did with your body. So if you happen to have, someone that was a bit sadistic or just wanted to try something out, what was that movie, Get Out? If you had anybody who just wanted to try anything on you, you didn't have any choice with that. There was no choice. And so there's going to be distrust. And then with all the other, with the number 45, this is all going to go away, but no, we're going to have this. I mean, there's all this back and forth, and it's like, okay, so who's really, what is really the process that's happening right now? And so you have medical professionals trying to ease our minds by taking the vaccine, because they're on the front lines too.
Right.
The nurses and doctors, not some of the specialty doctors, but the ones who are in the hospitals that treat us everyday folks. They're there, and they're getting filled up, and people are dying, and nurses and doctors are getting sick as well as patients. Yeah, it's true, it's real, it's not fake. And the vaccine, it has been speedy, the production of it. And so that's questionable. And technology has changed,
Mm-hmm.
and things can speed up, which is true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yet and still, we're thinking about all this that has happened prior to.
Yeah. Yeah. That collective memory piece, right?
Yes.
And as we're thinking all of this out, you all help me out in the comments. Go ahead and ask your questions.
Ask questions.
If you feel any skepticism about this vaccine, we're not here to bash it. We're not here to bash any particular.
It's because one day I think, I'm going to take it. I'm like,
Right.
I'm a two-time breast cancer survivor, so I know I have pre-existing conditions. I
Exactly.
know they have not collectively done any kind of studies on how this vaccine interacts with breast cancer treatments or survivorship or anything like that. Because if you've gone through any of those treatments, those side effects are long-term, forever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so,
I've never been through that, but I've read about them.
mhm.
Because I know I was reading some of your work actually. Because newsflash, there are only a few folks in the field of communication that actually say I am a womanist scholar, and I use, and so I was like, man, I can't use this because it's not directly involved with what I'm doing, or I would use it here, right? And I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was one of your pieces I was looking at. I was also looking at something else. Oh, the name it's right on the tip of my tongue. Another piece by a Black woman. And y'all are talking about just being a Black woman and suffering through all of these different, health disparities and atrocities, right? It's just different. It's just different. And the morbidity rates,
Mhm.
folk, for almost any and every disease, illness, sickness, whatever it is the highest. I know for myself in doing breastfeeding research, I do more, y'all, rhetoric of medicine. I'm a rhetorician, big R, right? And so I have those conversations about, how is this functioning um, um, within our society? How is it politicized? What's being, specifically, right? And so I'm not so much into the numbers and those sort of things, where Dr. Annette is much more well versed. I'm sure he said she took classes in genetics, but right here, COVID numbers for Tennessee, it's 484,285 cumulative. Okay. And so, with this all being said, what Dr. Annette is speaking to is how many Black folks were in the study, right? And then, of course, with that historical distrust of the medical community, because folks still don't think Black folks need enough
Oh no. You're
pain medication.
Oh no, because your tolerance for pain is much higher. And so if you're here, you must be trying to get some drugs.
Which connects to the opioid crisis,
Yes.
which connects to poverty, which connects to classism. And class is so racism and sexism are class stratifications.
Mhm.
Uh, so when you are a raced body, all right, now you are automatically a class body. When you are a gendered body, a sexed body, then you are also classed. And so as a Black woman, it's like that tripartite oppression or triple oppression, as some would say. And so, with that being said, if you don't mind, um, talk a little bit about, for those that don't know, Henrietta Lacks. Talk a little bit. I think most of us are familiar with Tuskegee. Who is Henrietta Lacks, and why is she so important? And talk about the book Medical Apartheid. Like, what break it down for us.
One of so if you saw the movie about her life and then continue to follow that, it's just right on. She went to the hospital. She was having pains and on the female region.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, She did not want any of her tissue kept or anything like that. They kept her tissue, biopsied it, took parts of her. It didn't let her know or anything. So continually over the years, they're reproducing the cells from her body, her tissues, over the years, and doing all different kinds of experiments on them. And so her family did not reap any of the rewards or benefits. And we know that medical research is a multi-billion-dollar business. Billion would it be? And so there's just a lot that when you go and you sign on those papers, when you go to the hospital, you signed away everything. And so, when you say, oh, I want to see that when you're done taking it out of me, I want to know what it looks like. For some of us, there's a reason we do that. I don't want you keeping that for any reason. Just get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They're not going to say that, and but when you sign those papers, you sign away your rights to your body parts, to your tissues. Mm-hmm. Whatever they took out of you, they can do whatever they want with it. They can keep those for samples, and particularly if you're going through some sort of rare, you have a cancer or other disease that they really want to study and take a look at, and so they'll keep that and hold it off to the side and do whatever they want. So that's what happened with her, and then her family, there was no benefit from that for them at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so if you read the book or you watch the movie, you have all that. But with medical apartheid, Harriet Washington did. It's like a history. So she's I don't know if it's an anthropological historian or something like that. But anyway, history's involved.
Right.
She gives a long historical view of just the relationship of African Americans with medical doctors and medicine. And so she pulled out all these different ways that studies were done to benefit humankind, but at the expense of. And so when you think about some of the when you think about Jews and the Nazis and all the experiments that were done, some of that stuff was done over here first, on this side of the water first. And so she also talks a bit about that in her book, and that whole scenario and what's happening right now politically just is going to take us to a new topic. So we might have to schedule a different talk for that. But it's just the idea that when we think about what's happening politically, and social, with the social justice and economics and everything that's happening right now, and the way that the propaganda machine is running, that is definitely taking from the playbook of Nazi Germany, and it's being repeated, and we ask ourselves, how could anybody follow that individual to commit such atrocities? Well, it's happening right here. So that's a different conversation, but it's connected. It's connected in how we look at health and medicine in our community and trust. It is. And so that's just based on, everybody will have their own opinion on that. I am not an MD, but I can read, I can process.
Right.
My fingers are too fat for surgery.
And you have a PhD.
And right? I have a PhD, yes.
And that's the thing, is that we are concerned with research and implementing new research and pushing our fields forward. Not to say that MDs don't write, because a lot of them do.
They do. They do.
But that's not at the forefront of their professional agenda. And so that's really and truly the main difference. I do want to highlight what you were saying, though, about the vaccine. And I know a lot of people are very apprehensive And I know a lot of Black doctors, nurses, professionals are getting out there and they're speaking up. And I'm going to take it. Let's be calm. Let's be thoughtful about this. And I know the trepidation that all of you feel. But there are a lot of these different pre-existing condition, diabetes, high blood pressure. What
Mm-hmm.
what would old folks say? Sugar, right? And some of this is very connected to the way that we eat. And a lot of people demonize the way that Black folk eat. But why do Black folk eat the way that they do? Right? We have a history of being placed in and forced into positions where we couldn't afford the good food, right? If you were to be on, a very, very tight income, it's often, I was watching a documentary maybe from 10 years ago, but it's so interesting. But it was basically demonstrating how, these folks in very rural areas, and it was two Black families, one white, they were in the white family, or group was in West Virginia. But they were speaking of how they didn't really have access to fresh foods, ready access.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just saying, we eat fried chicken, baked beans, pork chops, candy yams. And I like my food sopped up. Don't get me wrong. I can cook and I can throw down a little bit better than my mama, but don't let she'll probably, bench for me. There are a few things she cooks better than me. I will admit. But really and truly, we're many times, especially in these urban areas, in food deserts. And so when you don't have access to certain foods, when you don't have access to the healthy, organic, right, stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it sets you up for failure, right? It's just like in the educational system where, you don't have the books and the technology and all of that stuff. It sets you up to not be able to do some of the same things, right? And so we have to go 10 times harder. That's what we mean, right? And trying to advance and trying to, right? But back to the skepticism, it's not just skepticism with the medical industry, it's because we are so skeptical because systemic oppression is all around us, right? It's not just in the fact that a lot of the modern gynecological advancements
Mm-hmm.
done on a woman, an enslaved woman
Yeah.
that did not have anesthesia,
Nope.
right? It's the same reason why you hear old folks today, don't put my name on no registry to leave my parts.
Yep.
The it's all of these things are connected. And so when you have systemic institutionalized racism and injustice against a particular group of people, it makes you skeptical. And unfortunately, not just Tuskegee, but even in the 90s, they were still shooting up little Black boys with stuff to see how they would be affected differently. So it's such a wide conversation, but
It's very wide, and because even I go back and forth. Oh, should I take this vaccine? Should I not take it? I'm gonna take it, and I just chalk it up to, all right, I'll just be a test subject. I'm okay with that because I know that's part of the it's going to be part of the process. But when you talk about the skepticism, it just put me it reminded me of, I can't remember if it was the Depo-Provera or it was something that they would put under the skin, and it was women who were receiving aid to families with dependent children. That's what they called it during like the 80s and the 90s. And
mm-hmm,
their medical cards would pay for them to get it put in.
mm-hmm,
But if something happened and it needed to be removed, it was not covered. There was something extremely I said, oh, so they're trying to sterilize
uh-huh,
Black women, or and it was just so, again, another one of those examples about why there's this skepticism. And then we saw what they think of Black bodies. We're just finding out about the woman who they raided her house. She has no clothes on. It's the wrong house. She's not a man, and she wasn't wearing an ankle bracelet.
Let's just start with that.
Just start with those obvious things. And then how long did it take them to give her something to cover herself
It
up?
was like 30 minutes.
They handcuffed her first, and she sat there. So again, part of that, it's all connected. That skepticism comes in. It's all connected when we think about
Mm-hmm.
why, because where Black bodies are expendable, Black
Mm-hmm.
people are expendable in
Mm-hmm.
this country. So yes, there is, but we have to make it so we value each other.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's difficult, and I know this conversation is very difficult. It's so complex. It's not something that we can just sit on here for 45 minutes to an hour. And
Yeah.
those that still have questions, make sure you're posting your questions. We've got some great audience feedback. Y'all are doing an excellent job. I'm going to highlight some more in just a second here. But you're right. I mean, we can't sit up here and say that these things are not connected and these things are not related, and we can't say that they are in a vacuum or
Hmm.
up to themselves, right? And so when we don't value Black bodies, right, we don't care what we put in them, we don't care what we do to them, right? When we started in this country, bought and sold as chattel, that's why it's called chattel slavery,
Hmm.
right? The particular pestilence and pain of the productions of slavery in this country made for our experience to be so much more, so much different than any and everybody else in the world. And that's just the truth. And so this is not the oppression Olympics, but really and truly, we have to think thoroughly about that.
Hmm.
I want to kind of shift just quickly as we're wrapping up. Um, I am hopeful too about the vaccine. I do know at some point I'll have to take it. At this point, I'm not really in a position to do so. But I will say this, that as we move forward, we as researchers, you all in the comments, in the community, in society, because we all need to be researchers. Just because you don't have a PhD, EDD, DN, or whatever, you need to do research. And that's what Charmaine said. She said, I am an avid researcher.
Yes.
I know that it takes several years to truly understand the effects of vaccines. And
Hmm.
vaccines, here's the piece, typically take 10 to 15 years of research.
Yes.
Oh, and she gave a citation. Come on.
Yes.
We love citations.
Yes, we do.
Development and testing before being approved by the FDA and made available to the public. The speed of this vaccine and unknown elements of COVID-19 raises so many red flags on
Hmm.
historical distrust related to medicine. And I think she just took the words out of
Yeah,
my mouth.
she did. Yeah.
Thank you. You took the words out of my mouth, sis, because you know it's been so fast, and I won't speak directly because of my job. I won't speak directly to a lot of the particular political landscape uh, that has been crafted and curated by a particular rhetorical bend. I won't
Hmm.
get to that. But I will say that Charmaine hit the nail on the head. And so we're rushing to get this vaccine, and not to say that we shouldn't have, but it feels very uncomfortable, particularly if you're Black and you're already uncomfortable in a space that was not created with you in mind. And so Black lives are not mattering; they're still being killed. As you said with the lady, we thank God that she wasn't killed, but also too, I'm thinking about as we move forward, we're going to have a Black vice president, Black female vice president.
Hmm.
So there are all of these different things that are happening at once, and 2020 has been a lot.
It's been a lot, and one of the other pieces that I look at is the legislation that's connected to all of this, and so really think about they're having this issue and discussion about liability
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to make people go back to work and they're going to make people take this vaccine or you won't have a job. So
Mm-hmm.
government might not legislate it, but your employer will say, if you want to work here, you got to get the vaccine. And then, there's 2 doses. So then you're going back for more. So there's this liability with the COVID protocol to make, if you get COVID or any other reaction to this vaccine, you cannot sue your employer for making you take this. So there's a lot of everything is so connected for this. I'm like, are they using Henrietta Lex's cervical cancer cells to do any testing with this? Because they've used that as a foundation for a lot of different things. So we just thinking about what they're doing, and yes, the speed of production has moved up because of technology, but testing different groups, just like Charmaine said, is a long process that we have not done. A long process.
And that's the thing. And I mean, the one thing that I also want to highlight, and this is why I thought it was really important for us to have this conversation and to merge the conversations. I think it went well to put them together, is that I've seen on MSNBC, CNN, have I seen every news program? No, I have not. But of the ones, and that's several that I have seen, I have not seen any news source host a Black scholar on a panel or a group of folks to discuss the skepticism in the Black community. They'll say, "Oh, Black folks are skeptical," and I understand that some of these folks are brown. There was one that looked to be Indian, based on just the last name. I'm not certain, but based on the last name, but the particular differences and nuances in our cultures, yes, there's definitely overlap. But as we said, both, right? The particularities of Black folk in this country, you got to have Black folks speak on Black folk stuff, right? And so I think it's important that our voices and our bodies and our thoughts and our theories are centered, right? In this conversation. Because even with the conversation with Dr. Biden, it is very particular when a Black woman, is a doctor or a Black preacher. I am reverend. And that little bit of history fact, y'all, I know you remember these folks, and the young folk probably don't know these. Like Reverend L.L., this Smith or MC Jones or something like that. What they were doing is they would not allow people to have their full name because they didn't want them to be calling them by what? Their first name. It was about that respect. And so that hits different when we transition into the Black community. It hits different when we transition into the skepticism that Black folk might have right now. And truthfully, it is what it is, and it ain't what it is. It is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. But I want to segue to this last point as we're discussing the skepticism, as we're discussing the particularities of Black culture, of African American society, but particularly for both of us as womanist scholars, the particularities of Black women's experiences, Black women's theories, Black women's thought, Black women's truths. I want you to speak about Sister Circles writers, and then also too about this new book, Womanist Ethical Rhetoric. So if you will, please, ma'am, go ahead. Tell us about it.
Okay. Well, with Sister Circle writers, again, it's a recognition of our way of knowing, and making sure that if you have something in your head that you need to get out, that you want to write about, that you want to talk about, that you're able to get that information out. Doesn't matter who the audience is. It could be an academic writer. You could be doing something for your church, trying to put together some ministry curriculum. It could be because you are working with a particular community organization and you're trying to pull together the information and the knowledge that you're taking and disseminating to your particular audience. And when I have something that I like to call the womanist ethic of care, and with the womanist ethic of care, we are centering Black women and Black women's way of knowing and understanding and doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because with that, when Black women are healthy, everybody's healthy.
That's right. Say it again. Say it
When
again.
Black women are healthy, everybody is healthy. And if you are a medical professional, if you are a teacher, if you center, if a Black woman, and I'm even speaking of our little girls, because our little girls, they're seen as women, they're not seen as little girls.
Mm-hmm.
If they come to you with questions and they're giving and telling you and talking to you about their experience and what's happening to them, believe them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's truth there. Believe them.
Mm-hmm.
And so center that experience. And when you come up with your protocol for an IEP for how they're going to learn in the educational setting, or when we come to you as grown women and we're having aches and pains and we can't explain why we're having these headaches and we're just being ignored, or we're having issues with our breathing and our lungs, or something's hurting,
Mm-hmm.
and you're dismissed. Stop, ask yourself, am I making this decision because she's Black? And it won't be asked that way. You have to ask it, well, if this was white, female, middle class, would this be the same protocol?
Mm-hmm.
Will this be the same decision? And so with the womanist ethic of care, that centers us. It centers our way of knowing, because we are caregivers. We look out for our communities, and it doesn't. And truth be told, it doesn't matter whether you look like us or not. We want everybody to be in their best place, in their best space.
You're cutting out.
Now, can you hear me?
It's cutting out just a little bit.
Okay. Is this better? No.
Mm-mm.
Let's see what we got going on here.
Mm-mm. And
Can you
excuse
hear me now?
no, it's a little distorted. Excuse us, you all. We that was her last point, and she was talking about the particularities of Black women's experiences, but most importantly, believing Black women when they go into the doctor's office. Believe them. I've had doctors not believe me before, and I don't know about y'all in the audience. If you haven't been believed, you can go on ahead and say I wasn't believed either. But Dr. Net, see if it's a little bit better right now. I can't hear you. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We can't hear you at all now. Oh no. Oh no. All right.
All right. Is this better?
There we go.
Okay.
Now.
All right. No, and so with the with the womanist ethic of care, and then with this with the new book that's coming out, it's called Womanist Ethical Rhetoric: A Call for Liberation and Social Justice in Turbulent Times. Mm-hmm. Different womanist scholars have taken that idea and applied it to different segments of our community. So we're looking at foreign language learning. We are looking at different ways that women and girls are cared for when it comes to trauma. And we're looking at leadership in organizations, and just recognizing and understanding that having this respect for Black women's way of knowing is important, and should be it should be recognized and not cast to the side.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Our ways of knowing are different. They are not deficient, but I would say that they are the determinant in making sure that all of us thrive. Not just this society, but really work toward that eschatological presence of hope and the satisfaction of knowing that God said, I come that you may have life and have it in more abundance.
We're diasporic people.
Yeah, we are.
And even when we're talking about this idea of womanism, there's Africana woman. I mean, we are a diaspora. Black people are everywhere. We are the foundation. And so when mother is well, everyone's well. The children are well. The men are well.
everyone,
Mm-hmm.
everybody,
Yep.
everybody, as
Mm-hmm.
Bishop say, everybody. All right. And so, with that being said, I want to just once again reiterate how just excited, tickle pink I am to have all of you here on today, this evening.
Mm-hmm.
This is officially the last Teach and Preach of 2020. If you had something preached to your spirit, go on ahead and say you preached on this evening, Doc. If you had something teaching to you, say, hey, it taught me a little something. I learned something new. You can go ahead and write that in the comments. And if it reached you, most importantly, make sure you are liking, make sure you are following at facebook.com/Dr. DNWD, because we are going to go into 2021 with another set of amazing scholars. We are
Mm-hmm.
doing this more regularly. Also, look for sistercirclewriters.com. Check out Dr. Matlock's book, also edited with Dr. Cerise Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know everybody that's in the text actually. So these are scholars that span the discipline of communication and religion and politics, uh, 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 linguistics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm so proud of the book. It's in the Race, Rhetoric, and Religion series, which is headed by my advisor, Dr. Andre Johnson.
My pastor.
Yes, yes. Our pastor. Well, not my pastor, but my other church
I
home,
know, right?
right? There is a copy of the book so you can see what it looks like on Amazon. I did have it up on my computer, but it's not working at this time, so we are using it. And
And
as
you can order it on sistercirclewriters.com as
yes,
well.
yes, you can. There is
Click shop and then my books, and it's right there. You
so
can
every
order it.
you need to know about Dr. Madlock, it is there at sistercirclewriters.com. If you would like to get in touch with her, there are touch points there on her website.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I want to just thank everybody for joining this conversation. If it was good to you, make sure you like, share, comment. You can, if you're late coming in, say, I'm just joining in, but you can catch on the replay. So I really just want to thank not just Dr. Madlock, but all of
Everybody.
the ladies and the gentlemen that have made this possible.
Mm-hmm.
I've said before on my walk with me's and on this that it is very awkward being on live. And I don't know if you ever really get used to it, but I really do believe that we are called for such a time as this. And when God gives you a voice, when God gives you a vision, when God asserts value onto what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing, no matter what it is, big and small, you are there to help the people. And so my prayer is that this has been a blessing to each and every person that has participated, to the audience members that have shared, to those of you. I thank you once, I thank you twice, I thank you three times in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa, Diwali, Hanukkah, all of that. But most importantly, I love you and God loves you more. We'll see you guys in 2021. Thank you again, Dr. Annette. Stay back for just a moment.
Okay.
We will see you guys next time.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.